let's move on to the NFC North, where I've decided to start with the Bears.
Of course.
Do they think that they have a quarterback decision to make, or are they just saying, okay, we're going to roll with Trubisky and do what we can to build around him, and if we don't like him at the end of this year, then okay, now it's time to move on.
So I think their problem is that they're very hamstrung by what they can do, right? It's the moves they had to make to go and get Trubisky were so aggressive in terms of trades that they don't have that much draft capital anymore, right? They've given up a lot already just to get this guy, and if you now want to give up more to replace him, you're in a really tough spot. So
this is literally the same situation that we just discussed with Washington, right? If you had your choice between Chase Young and say 3 or 4 draft picks, here's why you would take 3 or 4 draft picks. The Bears have Khalil Mack. They didn't have a first rounder last year. They don't again this year. How hamstrung are they right now as the rest of their roster just gets slowly depleted?
Right.
And they can't really fill those holes as efficiently as they could have with more picks.
So I think it's a slightly different situation, though, in terms of, like, if you'd had the quarterback, I think that's the time to start doing that stuff, right? Is to start playing for certainty, because we know we have the quarterback now, and we're not talking about, like, playing the odds of sort of best value anymore. We're talking about how do we assemble a Super Bowl team around this guy as fast as humanly possible. So I don't hate the idea that they went out and traded for Khalil Mack because they thought they had the quarterback. The problem is they didn't have the quarterback. So now you've had a big trade for Khalil Mack and a big trade for Trubisky, both of which are causing you problems because now you want the hell away from Trubisky. So I don't know that you can really do that in the draft. You only have like a pair of second-round picks.
Right.
In free agency, it is a really quarterback-rich free agency class. Trubisky is sufficiently mentally fragile that he turns off TVs in the building lest you hear bad things said about him. So that is a guy who will crumble immediately that you bring somebody in to take his job, right?
The TV thing doesn't matter.
It completely matters in terms of if you bring somebody else into this building, they need to be one of two things. They need to be the new starter, and Trubisky is immediately aware of the fact that he's now a backup. Or they need to be somebody so off the radar that he's not even thinking that his job is in any way in jeopardy.
Here's the thing, right? When you are going to make a draft pick, I think that there's a few things to consider, right? There's the stability, like how well can you predict this guy's future performance? How valuable is his role? And then what's the market, right? So we talk about Chase Young a lot. Edge, he is probably way better than edge 2, 3, 4, 5 by a significant margin. But there's a million different receivers to choose from, so maybe you wait on receiver. How about using that as the quarterback market right now, where I keep saying that there's like 15 or 20 guys who aren't completely interchangeable, but 15 to 20 guys in the middle tier of quarterback right now who could put together good seasons. And Trubisky is not even one of those guys. Like, he's graded below those guys. So so right now in the NFL, in theory, it is easy to find the 25th best starter who could in one given year be as good as the 10th best starter. Is that a fair way of assessing this?
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to find a mid-tier quarterback right now, and I think the Bears are sitting below a mid-tier quarterback.
Yeah.
Meaning the Mariota plan of bringing him in, the Teddy Bridgewater plan, I think makes a ton of sense because there's a higher chance that those guys will play better than Trubisky, and the Bears kind of have to make that move, I think.
Well, I think they're basically in a very similar spot to where the Titans were, right? Which is you're kind of stuck with this guy going forward for a period of time. You don't have an awful lot of cap space. You don't have the draft picks to make something aggressive happen to replace him in the draft. So you're basically stuck rolling with this guy for another season. And theirs is further complicated by the fact that this guy would appear to be a mental midget when it comes to dealing with adversity and criticism from the outside and all these kinds of things, right? So you're now, I don't know that you can sort of throw, you don't have You're
focused way too much on the adversity thing.
No.
Mitch Trubisky had no He had no outside influences or anything like that, and has graded like a bottom third starter regardless. It can't get any worse.
No. But the problem is that you're probably going to be stuck with starting him. So you don't want to do anything that further makes him worse.
You're not stuck doing anything.
You are.
You can make whatever move you want.
You can't because you don't have the money to do it. You can't go and say, all right, Trubisky is bad, so let's bring in a Teddy Bridgewater who's a better quarterback, and let's pay him like a starter. Because you don't have the money to do that, right? So you need to effectively bring in someone as a backup who you think can play better than Trubisky when he ultimately and inevitably plays himself out of the starting job. Like, that's a Marcus Mariota type, right? But the second you bring a guy like that in the building, Trubisky's going to, like, seize up and collapse.
No, you're overrating the whole thing. It doesn't matter what he does. It's like, because, like,
it does if you still plan on starting him.
You think his mental, like, he's going to play worse than he did just because there's another guy in the building?
Yeah.
The bigger issue is that he could play the same.
Yes. And you're already stuck with that. So the problem is, don't do anything that magnifies the chance of that happening.
Anyway, also have to replace Prince Amukamara in the secondary. I think those second-round picks, I think there could be some tackle value in the second round. I keep mentioning Josh Jones out of Houston, who's a first-round player on our board who could last it to the second. And, the cornerback, you want that group of corners maybe to drop, and that's another place that hasn't been a need necessarily for the Bears, just like offensive line. Their offensive line was one of the worst in the league last year out of nowhere. I was writing this up the other day. They all regressed. They were the epitome of the creep back toward average line, and they all regressed last year.
Right, but how much of that's Trubisky as well?
I mean, he was the same guy the year before.
No, he wasn't. He was worse last year than he was the season before.
Not by much, Sam. Not by much. Everything around him. By what measure?
By what measure? He was noticeably worse last season than he was the year before.
The final grade ended up pretty close. The difference was he wasn't getting help from
others. The final grade ended up pretty close because he came back and strung together like 4 games that were actually quite good.
Right, he just did them in different order.
Before that, he was abysmal.
He had the same year, but in a different order. In 2018, he went like 3 bad, 1 good, 3 bad, 1 good, 3 bad, 1 good. In 2019, it was like 12 bad, 3 good. That was it. It was the same 3 good games that he had. He just had them in order. Yeah, that was it.
I think
same year.
I think his baseline was noticeably worse last season.
Yeah, because it all happened in a row.
Yeah.
The point is, the left tackle, Charles Leno regressed, Bobby Massey regressed. They all regressed except James Daniels up front. Either way, the Bears looked like a really nice roster a year ago, and it's like they need offensive line help, could use another weapon, they need cornerback help, and they got to figure out quarterback. Did we fix them at all?
No.
Man, sorry, Bears fans, we couldn't fix you. Detroit Lions, we'll fix you guys. Darius Slay, they're talking about trading him.
Yeah, don't do that.
I think there's like a legit discussion here. Did he regress completely last year? I mean, over the last 2 years, he's ranked like 50th or 60th in just single coverage grade, including the 2018 season. And they play all this man coverage. It might actually be a good time, the more I look at the numbers, to trade Darius Slay. But it's a really uncomfortable situation because they've spent the last 4 or 5 years trying to find a guy opposite Darius Slay to cover.
Mm-hmm.
So trading him
is a bad idea.
But is he even good anymore? Or is he good? Is he a number 1 corner anymore? Not this good,
I don't think he was
bad.
great last season, but before that, it was a pretty consistent run of very good play. I would be very reluctant to throw that out of the window when I don't have an obvious replacement and he's still only 29. Like, I don't see the reasons that you would do that other than to cash in when you think it's a valuable asset, and that just strikes me as purposeless. Like, all you're going to do is take the first-round draft pick that you get for Darius Slay and draft Darius Slay's replacement. The chances of whom actually being ever as good as Darius Slay are minimal. That's just dumb.
So roll with Slay plus.
Plus a draft pick.
Find CB2.
Might be good.
Yeah, I mean, we keep saying, look, the whole podcast is going to be about receivers and corners and O-line a little bit and some tackles, right? But it's important because the reason why all the teams we've listed, Washington, the Giants, why the Eagles, had their ups and downs, all of these teams, the Cowboys, because they couldn't cover well or because their pass game wasn't very good. I mean, that's why these teams are all needing help, the Bears, all these teams. So with Detroit, they play as much man coverage as anyone else. So they really need to roll 4 deep. They're not playing zone coverage to kind of like hide. Like the Colts The Colts can deal with some lesser talent at corner because they could hide him in a zone scheme, and you just need a guy that can tackle, less flashy position. The Lions really need corners. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on Isaiah Simmons to them?
You want to put Isaiah Simmons everywhere.
Well, I think, they're picking at 4.
Yes.
I'm sorry, they're picking at 3. So
3.
Anybody at 3, 4, 5, 6, they're all going to be in this Simmons discussion. The Lions fit the second time I've mentioned them.
Right. I don't think it'll be the last, though.
Yeah, you need some other teams in the top 10 that should be debating him.
Sure. I mean, look, in theory, he's a do-everything impact safety, so he fits everywhere, right? I don't think I think he fits fine there. I don't know that they're the most creative defense in the world to the point where, again, maximize what he can actually do. I don't love that fit from a getting the most out of his skill set point of view, but I think he would be a decent upgrade impact player for it.
I wouldn't take him if I'm Detroit there because Okudah's on the board and there's a chance they could get Chase Young. Although on the turn, early second-round pick, Julian Okwara from Notre Dame, when I was watching him, reminded me a little bit of Jamie Collins. Pure pass rusher in college at Notre Dame, just like Jamie Collins was, but moves well in space and really athletic. I could see everybody on the Belichick tree looking at Okwara and being like, Jamie Collins. I like that guy, can do something with him. And the way they've used Collins in the Belichick system is as a blitzer, coverage player, and made him a traditional linebacker, but with some versatility, I could see that being a really good fit for Patricia in the defensive overhaul.
Do you think that Patricia's scheme even wants a Chase Young, like a genuinely sort of devastating pure pass rusher?
So it's a great question, right? Because the whole Belichick tree has, as we've had this pass rush versus coverage debate, they've basically said, give me a guy who doesn't necessarily win, plays contain, pushes the pocket a little bit, but we really want to just win on the back end.
And not always, though, right? It was more a sort of Patricia era thing. Like, you go back far enough, they had those sort of specialist pass rushers like, Tully Banta-Kane or whatever. Like, that's basically what he did.
They still wanted to create pressure on the quarterback, but they didn't find premier talent.
Well, that's no. But even stylistically, right? When like Patricia came in, it was very much a pivot towards the Rob Ninkoviches of the world, as opposed to the Tully Banta-Kanes, who are guys that were more pressure players.
Twitchier players.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I could see that. Look, the only time I think Belichick and the Patriots really attacked and went after an edge rusher was when they traded up for Chandler Jones. Yeah. And even he was more of like a technique, hands winner, and not
all-rounder.
Yeah, he was,
right. I'm not sacrificing what I want fundamental-wise to get the pressure here.
He was also big enough for them that they put him at 5 technique, and he did multiple things. I don't know. It's a good question if Chase Young is really that perfect fit for them. They should trade down too. Every team should trade down with all these holes. They should trade down.
I also kind of like some of the mid-round options for them. Like if you're going to go cornerback later on in this draft, Troy Pride from Notre Dame, I think would be a fantastic fit there. I think he's a good cover guy. Stood out at the Senior Bowl, Steve, and you know how I like that. I think he fits
that goes without
system
saying.
Perfectly. I think that's I kind of have a reasonable amount of confidence, albeit an incredibly small sample size, that Oruwariye can be a strong number 2. But Troy Pride, I think, could help both challenge for that number 2 spot. And I think he would also have the versatility to line up in the slot.
The offensively, the other thing they need to continue to do is continue to unleash Stafford. 4 yards per attempt per play higher.
That's not good.
Average depth of target. What's not good?
Before, like the fact that he had.
That he had to. Yeah. So they didn't really reap the benefits last year as far as wins and losses. But I think if they could shore up some stuff defensively and continue that aggressive style with Stafford throwing to Golladay and Marvin Jones and all, I think they can make some moves next year. But they also have to treat this offseason to build in the pass game more than they have in the past over the last couple of years.
Golladay aside, those are receivers that are getting on that could, they could get younger at that spot across
Danny
the board.
Amendola's back. They're all, yeah. Galladay's young, but yeah.
Other than Golladay, the rest of that room is getting older.
Yep. Throw more weapons. Get another receiver.
Galladay's getting older as well. He's just younger.
You're getting older. I'm getting older. We're all getting older.
Yeah.
All right. Green Bay Packers, biggest offseason need for the team that went to the NFC Championship, lost to the 49ers.
They really did, right?
They did. They stumbled into it.
How did that
They
happen?
Snuck in. Remember they were the worst 13-3 team in history?
Yeah.
Remember that?
They went to the NFC Championship game.
How about the Combine really just resolving things between Aaron and George and Eric? And it was great. Everybody coming together.
Schatz rather than Rodgers, right?
Nagler.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Nagler.
Nagler, not Schatz or Rodgers.
Rodgers, yeah.
Sorry.
Rodgers would have been interesting.
It would have been, yeah, after they trashed the Packers.
Yeah.
Playmakers for Rodgers has to be Jimmy Graham just got released yesterday. Versatile tight end option. There's rumors that they're going to be all in on Austin Hooper. I think that would be a mistake.
Yes.
We don't love Austin Hooper.
No.
I think he does things that you can scheme up for tight ends, right?
Yeah.
Like running wide open. I was even just watching his targets. It's like he just ran wide open up the seam. He's sitting in a zone. He's taking one of those underneath or flat routes,
Austin
right?
Hooper's production is the running backs of the passing game. Like
nice one.
If you can't achieve what he is achieving right now, given what he's been schemed up with anybody else off the street, then what the hell are you even doing?
Right. He's not going to like line up out wide and instill fear into the defense or create a mismatch issue or anything like that. He's going to be a complementary piece.
He's the Thomas Jones of tight ends. He's like a calibration tool for your passing game.
We need the all Thomas Jones team. He definitely wins.
I mean, that's basically what he is. He's a calibration tool for how well you're scheming tight ends open.
Yeah. So I wouldn't go all in on Austin Hooper if I'm the Packers.
Where are you going to fix the receiver group?
So
free agency or the draft?
So at the back end of the first round, I think you're looking at...
Or both.
I think you're looking at a T. Higgins, Jalen Reagor type of situation. I think Reagor would be really nice opposite Devontae Adams, the TCU receiver.
Yeah.
Free agency-wise, I don't know. Do you have a great...
I want to
like Emmanuel Sanders,
yes.
we've said for a while.
Yes.
Would be good there. So what if they actually did both, right? So you go Emmanuel Sanders, you have Devontae Adams, two really nice route runners, and a Reagor that can stretch the field a little bit.
So what I like about the Emmanuel Sanders thing is that he is a short-term option, right? That's his negative in most people's eyes. But the reason I like that for Green Bay is that I don't think they are done with the group of young guys that they've drafted over the past couple of seasons to try and add receivers next to Devontae Adams. Obviously, they haven't all worked out, and in fact, none of them have really consistently emerged as a receiver that A, Rodgers trusts, and B, has consistently shown that they can be a secondary option. But I don't know that they're convinced that they've screwed those picks up yet, right? So maybe you bring in an Emmanuel Sanders who's shown that despite being his age, he can still get it done and be a top 20 wide receiver in the NFL. But he's also, like, that has to be a good influence in terms of showing the young guys how to do it, developing them by proxy almost. And then in a year or two, he steps out and maybe one of those guys has shown enough while he was a tertiary option, learning from the other two, that he now actually can step up to be that secondary guy. And you don't have to go, crap, we messed it up, now let's draft two more receivers and try all over again and not necessarily fix it.
Yeah, I mean, the Packers have executed the strategy that we are talking about quite a bit, which is draft volume at important positions at like receiver and corner.
They just haven't hit on them.
Right, but I mean that's part of the strategy. Like you have to keep trying, and if you're 1 out of 3, it's like, all right, maybe you found a player there. I would bring Sanders in if for nothing else. Like the guys that are there, the Valdez Scantlings of the world and Geronimo Allisons, like the guys that he's thrown to in recent years, are more outside guys, outside the numbers types of players. Even Devontae Adams, it's like he runs a slant, and then it's kind of like the fade, stop, route tree type of thing, right? A good old-fashioned dig route. That's Emmanuel Sanders. How do you get Aaron Rodgers to attack the middle of the field more effectively? I think getting more receivers who win in traffic, and having him trust more of those guys within the scheme, I think will be really important too. I mean, if you're trying to extract production out of Aaron Rodgers in his later years here, you need that. And then it's like when he was thrown to Jimmy Graham, man, he just felt so slow. I mean, Hooper's an upgrade over Jimmy Graham, I think. Yeah. I mean, if you're saying Jimmy Graham he had some games where he was, the drag route, the seam route, like he was open schematically, like Hooper could do that at a better level, make a contested catch here and there. I don't think it's worth more than $10 million a year, but that would help. Defensively, there's a lot of talk about them not being able to stop the run. I think that was more schematic than actual personnel. And a lot of people like Blake Martinez going back there. Is he going to make a ton of money on the open market at linebacker?
I don't know. I wouldn't pay it to him.
Right. So a lot of Packers fans love him. Had over 100 tackles every year, all that stuff. Continue to build that back seven. And somebody had a rumor about them trading up for Isaiah Simmons, trading their whole draft and everything for him. No, 1,000 times no. That would be a bad move. But I think the biggest priority is building that offense around Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love Sanders. I think that's a big thing. I wouldn't hate drafting a receiver as well, but I don't, like I say, I don't think they're ready to give up entirely on, particularly Valdez-Scantling, I think, is the guy they would like to see sort of take a step forward. And anything they can do to encourage that whilst also fixing the problem and not relying on him is good.
All right, let's move on to the Minnesota Vikings, Sam. They're heading into the last year of Kirk Cousins' contract.
Yeah.
How about that? The Vikings are going to be sitting there as one of the, unless they get a long-term deal done, one of the biggest QB-needy teams in the NFL heading into next offseason, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting is while they've been, so the Cousins deal has been kind of fascinating because it's not like it was ever crippling, right? It's always basically put them up against the cap. And they're always able to get away from it and make enough moves happen to still function and still be viable and build a decent team around him, but it's a concern. Now, obviously, we know Cousins has never been a superstar. This was his best season, and he was, good, not great. They haven't looked to go beyond him, right? They haven't drafted somebody that could be the next few, you know what I mean? Given the stress that Kirk Cousins was putting on this roster from a cap point of view and the fact that he wasn't that great and short-term deal, et cetera, you're staring down the barrel of another monster contract for him. You should have been drafting a quarterback every single year just on the off chance.
But this is the catch-22 of the NFL. And again, Cousins had a top 10 caliber year last year.
Yes.
And he's probably not a top 10, in air quotes,
right, quarterback
every single year, right? He's the mid-tier quarterback
that's as good as he's going to be.
But here's the thing is, when you have the guy that, again, in this hypothetical, ranks between 8th and 25th in the NFL, Cousins is in that mix. He's 12th, 13th, whatever he is. You have the catch of, do I continue to draft quarterbacks trying to hit on that first contract guy, or do I have to, because he needs it, put all resources into building around this guy? Like, in theory, when you have a Kirk Cousins caliber quarterback, the only way you're going to maximize his value is with a great supporting cast.
I mean, I'm not saying you take Lamar Jackson in the first round because you need an alternative.
Well, maybe that would have helped.
Because you need an alternative. There's no way that offense, can you imagine the offense they would have crafted around Lamar Jackson in Minnesota? I'm not saying that was your solution, but they should have been spending a draft pick on a quarterback every single year. The idea that they were happy to roll into seasons with Sean Mannion as their backup to Kirk Cousins with zero eye to the future is honestly pretty negligent. And now you're staring down this situation where it's the last year of Cousins' deal. You have messed up the places you did spend the draft capital sufficiently that suddenly there's a lot of holes on this roster. And the Vikings basically need to nail this offseason to not be in trouble next year.
What if it's not? What if I go back to the fact that the rest of, finding a Marcus Mariota or Jameis Winston in today's NFL isn't that difficult? And then the difference between Mariota and Winston is small. I mean, the difference between Mariota, Winston, and Cousins. So a year from now, there's going to be more of these mid-tier quarterbacks on the market. And they kind of have to go all in on Cousins this year and build the roster around him. What if you don't need a backup option in today's NFL just because there are literally 32 quarterbacks that are probably capable of starting, and out of that group, only 28 of them might have jobs, actual starting jobs, because of rookies and whatever it might be. Guys like Mariota falling out of favor. Just another thought of just where the market is right now. Finding a Cousins-level quarterback or someone similar, 90% of him, might not be that difficult in today's NFL.
I mean, it might not be, but you're still in trouble because at some point you need to make the decision that now we're moving in a different direction. We're letting go of a fairly sure thing for a complete unknown, and that's risky. I think their bigger problem is that all the talent that they had amassed has eroded badly because they haven't fixed problem spots. So their offensive line is still bad, and they've thrown resources at the offensive line. That's a real issue.
And I've been saying their defense for a while, they've had some turnover over the last couple of years, but it felt like this defense that just had this nucleus, and it didn't really have the depth. When a guy moved on, you didn't feel great about the replacements or anything like that, and now it feels a lot more depleted than it was in 2017 when they were in the NFC Championship.
They don't have any corners anymore.
Yeah.
Trey Waynes is a free agent, Mackenzie Alexander is a free agent, and Xavier Rhodes hasn't played well in 2 years. So you basically, your top 3 corners are all gone for all intents and purposes.
I like that they spent the first rounder on Mike Hughes in 2018 trying to have that foresight, but
right.
You know.
So you need Mike Hughes to be really good next year for you to even be in a fighting chance. You've got no cap space. They have the least cap space in the NFL, like $2 million or something, under $2 million. So they can't go out and fix this in free agency. They should probably be shopping at the cheapest possible reclamation spot for cornerback. So, at that point, you're talking, like, who knows? At that point, are you saying, how much would Mackenzie Alexander cost to bring back? Or, Tremaine Brock was in this building a while ago and played quite well like 4 years ago. Can we get that season out of him again? Like, you're shopping at some real bargain.
Who's the best XFL corner right now?
Right. You're genuinely in that kind of position. And you need to start thinking about cornerback being your first pick in the draft as well. Because, today's NFL, you cannot have a substandard group of cornerbacks. The Vikings did last year, and on paper, they're significantly worse heading into 2020.
So late first round, another team, late first round, perhaps looking at corner. So similar names that we talked about on our board, Trevon Diggs.
Diggs I like a lot.
From Bama. You like that fit there?
Yeah.
For what they do?
Family connection might
the Diggs brothers.
Rein Stefan in a little bit.
The Diggs going at it. What about Jeff Gladney from TCU? I know you like him a little bit too.
Yeah,
he's 36 on our board, borderline first round.
They're also an interesting team for a Cameron Dantzler, right? Who's now, his stock is kind of up in the air because his combine performance was kind of crappy, right? Ran 4.6s. A lot of people saying that shouldn't be a true indicator of his ability, but every time you run something one place and then run it faster at your pro day, how much do you trust that, right? So Dantzler's intriguing because I think he'd be a really good fit in that defense, but he's a guy that does have those red flags of exactly what is he from a measurable standpoint.
All right, so the Vikings, you don't love the spot they're in heading into this offseason.
I think they need to nail basically every personnel decision they make this offseason to not be in trouble next year, and that's a tough spot to be in. Again, what do you do in the offensive line? Because you've got multiple spots that need immediate attention, and you don't have the cap space to make anything happen. So they basically need to have the best draft that they've had in a decade to not have problems.
There's a lot of pressure there.
Yes.
Highest paid players on the team: Cousins, Donnell Hunter, Stephon Diggs, Riley Reif, Xavier Rhodes. Are we talking about Rhodes being cut?
I don't know that they
point?
can, right? Isn't that contract still prohibitive in terms of getting rid of him anytime soon?
I think it's about $8 million in dead money.
So they could, but
in the future,
it's not a great spot to be in, right?
But it's 12.9 on the cap, just for this year. Linval Joseph. Look, we're over time on the Vikings. We'll wrap it up, but I love defensive tackles and all that stuff. I love watching them play. But when Linval Joseph is on the cap for $12 million, excellent player, getting a little bit older, that's where the risk comes in at these less valuable positions when you're trying to rebuild at valuable positions. So that can be kind of difficult.
Yeah, they've got a lot of work to do.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.